Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Truth That Heals podcast. Today, I have a special guest. She is an actor, writer, filmmaker, and now she is starting a new career, and that is stand up comedy. She's based in Dublin, Ireland, but she's from the West Side, or as some like to call it, the Best Side, which is Galway, Ireland. And she's here with us today. She's gone through ups, she's gone through downs. Everyone, I would like to present to you Claire Millane. Claire, how are you doing today?
Very well. Perfect. Thank you so much. My surname, Milan. Perfect. You got it
Okay,
absolutely perfect.
okay, good. I've been practicing because the way her last name is spelled, I would pronounce it Millane, but I've been practicing I've been practicing for this, so
Well
I'm
done.
glad
Perfect.
I'm glad I was able to pronounce it correctly. How do you do today?
I'm good, actually. Yes, yes. I've been getting over the flu, but I'm okay. Don't worry. I'm still here, still standing. And yeah, I'm delighted to be on this podcast. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us today. For those of you who haven't been following my podcast or my story, I was actually in Dublin about a month ago trying to do some research, trying to do some soul searching, prayer. And in that journey that I had there, I decided to go to a filmmaking class, or more like a filmmaking meetup. And I attend this meetup, and that's where I see Claire. And Claire is, when I saw her, she was vibrant, she was talkative, she 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 seemed like a powerful person. And in my mind, seeing that when you don't know a person, when I was looking at you, you just seem so in control. You seem like the boss. You seemed
Really?
you were awesome. But when I
You.
dig deeper,
Mm.
I was able to learn that personality, that strength didn't come overnight. Or did it come overnight?
No, it certainly didn't. It took years and years and years because you saw one side of me, and it was so lovely to see. Like, so I run this filmmaking club called Dublin Filmmakers, and we're a voluntary filmmaking group where we put up a notice on meetup.com, and anyone can go to it, professionals, amateurs, anything. And Ryan turned up, and yeah, it's remember seeing your lovely smiley face, and we have a few Americans in the group, and we get everyone to introduce themselves. And I think you had such a fascinating story as well. And yeah, it's such an amazing group. And so you saw me doing there, the lovely, or the person with loads of energy talking to people.
Yeah.
I wasn't always like that. I was the complete opposite. So when I was younger, I was extremely quiet. I couldn't talk to people, couldn't look people in the eye. Even my grandfather used to think I was deaf. Like, I just wouldn't respond to anyone. But secretly, with my very close friends and my family, I was the joker. I was cracking jokes, and I was like the life and soul of the party. But to the majority of people outside that, I was extremely quiet, wouldn't talk. Yeah, I was totally different person. As you said, we were talking the other day, it's like Cyrano, the film Cyrano.
Yes.
Just you did with I don't what's his name again, that actor. I forget his name. He was in Game of Thrones. But it was like he had two lives. And for me, I had two lives. I had this life with my very close friends, my family, where I was me, bubbly, outgoing, cracking jokes, making people laugh. But to the majority of people outside that, I was so quiet. And I found it so hard to be comfortable in the wider world, but only with my small group of friends and family. So yeah, but it did take a lot of many years to actually own myself and who I am and accept myself, like faults and all. So
So I'm so happy that you mentioned that about owning yourself,
mhm.
because we've been having conversations, leading up to this podcast. And every time we have a conversation, it's like, it just gets deeper and deeper. And in one of the conversations you had, you mentioned about the possibility of owning yourself and who you are. And today you're mentioning it again right now about you had to own yourself with all of your faults, all of your weaknesses, and climb up. And now one of the scariest things that someone can do is stand-up comedy. So
Yes.
so I know that's the end of the journey, kind of, because
Yeah.
that's like the newest thing yet that you've been tackling. But if I may ask, what led you to stand-up comedy?
So we have to go a little bit back in my life. So I came out of secondary school, and in Ireland, around the time I came out of secondary school, it was kind of like kind of a Celtic tiger. I don't know if your US audience heard about, in Ireland, we had this massive boom in the economy, and it was kind of expected everyone go to university. And if you didn't go to university, you were considered you wouldn't make it in life. So everyone went to university, including myself. And I ended up doing marketing and languages, and I was extremely unhappy in university. It was an awful time. Even though I spent my third year in Spain, and it's a whole different story there. I just really didn't enjoy it. But I remember there was one class we had, a culture class, and we had to act in it. And when I started doing that, I kind of just became alive, and there was a spark. And then I started doing extra work. There was a film being shot in my university, and I started doing extra work. And thank God, this is something here. And I'd done acting when I was younger, but I was very quiet and shy, and I found it hard to kind of break out of myself. And I'd always written as well. I'd always been creative. I was always that person who would be either baking or painting something or writing something. And then when I left university, I got a job, and I was actually really unhappy in the job. I was badly bullied in the job, and I left that job, and I ended up long-term unemployed. And when I was long-term unemployed, I ended up working for a theatre called the Focus Theatre. I don't know if anyone heard about it, but it's where Gabriel Byrne, anyone knows Gabriel Byrne, he trained there, very famous. And I ended up working behind the scenes there. And all these amazing actors, Irish actors, would come in, and I'd be making teas and coffees. I'd get to meet these people, and it was just magic. It was just magic. So I ended up training there. And then I ended up getting involved in community theatre. And I remember when I tried to get involved in one community theatre, and I went into the audition, and I said one word, and they said, "Sorry, you haven't got the part. You can't act." And I thought, okay, they're not the community theatre for me. Then the following week, I went to another community theatre, and I walked through the door, and I auditioned for anyone knows it's a very famous Irish play called The Playboy, the Western World. I went in, auditioned, ended up getting the lead role. So my first full play I was ever in, I ended up playing the lead role. And because I was long-term unemployed, I had nothing else to do but work in this play. And I was kind of freaking out, thinking, oh my God, how will I take on this part? And I remember during the day where I was living, I actually built the set in my living room, and I used to put in extra work to figure out how to play this character. So we went on then, and it was just magic. And I got bitten by the acting bug. And I was still working in kind of administration jobs. I ended up going to another really awful administration job, and I was still working in the Focus Theatre, but I never got to be on stage in one of their shows. I was always making teas and coffees for the actors. And when the director said, "Claire, can make another tea for an actor," I was like, that's it. I want to apply for full-time acting school. So I rang up my parents and said, like, we're not a rich family at all, we don't have much money. But I said, listen, this is what I want to do in my life. I want to become a professional actor. And they said they'll support me. And then I went in, and I rang up the Gaiety, I auditioned, and I got put on the reserve list, which means if someone drops out, doesn't want to go, I'll get in. So I was going to emigrate to the UK at that stage, so I didn't have much options in Ireland. And then I remember it was 9 o'clock at night, someone from the Gage School of Acting rang and saying I got in. And I just thought, this is magic. This is magic. And the only reason I could go to acting school was because my grandparents had died and left money. And without their inheritance allowed me to go to acting school. And I don't know, I was very close to my grandparents, my mother's parents, and I'd love to have met them and said thank you, because it was just amazing that their inheritance changed my life. Because even before I went to acting school, I was the type of person who was still very shy, who struggled to talk to people. Like I couldn't talk on a telephone even. I was just crippled with this severe shyness besides people very close to me or my family. So people I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. But went to the Gage School of Acting. I think Colin Farrell trained there. Anyone knows Colin Farrell, and a few very well-known actors as well. And it was at that time, it was the only full-time acting school in Ireland. So I think 400 people apply and 19 get in. So I was so lucky to get in, and I loved it. It was the most magic 2 years of my life. You would go in at 8 o'clock in the morning. You start with yoga, actually, funny enough, and you don't leave till 6 at night. It's all physical. You only had 1 hour of theatre history. We used to fall asleep. We used to do tap dancing and everything. And then I'd have something to eat, and then from 7 to midnight, you would work on the next day stuff. So it was extremely intense, extremely disciplined. And I had one actually magic teacher there, and he was a voice coach. He actually was a voice coach for Glenn Close when she was working in film in Ireland. So he's a very well-known voice coach, and he gave me so much confidence. And I used to have, there's a thing called it's sometimes when you speak a glottal stop. It's kind of a speech, not speech impediment, but it doesn't make your speech very clear. And I was a serial glottal stopper.
There you go.
And he cleared that. He taught me about posture and how to breathe, and he gave me so much confidence. And the teachers in there gave me so much confidence. And we'd another class as well, where we actually, it's called Manifesto, and we're given a theme every week, and we'd have to create a piece around the theme. So then my writing came in there as well. And that class, I was failing for ages. Every week I'd go in with a team and I'd fail, because afterwards, when you perform your piece, everyone would critique it, and mine just wasn't working out. And I remember this guy came in, and he I don't know if anyone knows, but for your American audience and your audience listening, there's a thing called commedia dell'arte, which is it's a farce or slapstick. It's where slapstick comes from. And this teacher came in and taught us commedia dell'arte, and I realized I had this comic timing more than anyone in my class. I just had this innate comic timing that was always there, but I managed to channel it. And I just took off in this class. And with the manifesto class I was failing, I took elements of commedia dell'arte and created this whole piece. And I put on this performance, and I got a standing ovation. And I couldn't believe it. I was failing so much, and then I got this standing ovation, and it was just absolutely magic. And I remember going through the acting school. I didn't miss one class in 2 years. And people were saying to me, I'm the one who will make it. Even people would come in out of the Gaiety from outside, and they'd see me perform, and they'd say, she's the one who will make it. So I was thinking, this is it now. My life will change. This is it. This is what I'm meant to do. It's, I'll come out of acting school. It'll still be tough. I'll get the agent. I'll do theatre work in Ireland, do films, go to the UK. That's my plan. So in the end of acting school, we had a showcase. You perform 2 scenes, and they invite agents. And this is the big thing. This is the thing like you've been working 2 years for. So I was in this massive theatre, and it was so exciting to go out and perform. I did my best. And afterwards, everyone's sitting around waiting for the phones to ring, which agent will call you, which casting director. And my phone stayed silent. No one rang me. I had no interest to anyone. So I was thinking, oh God, my plan isn't working out. What will I do? And I thought maybe later on they might ring. Maybe we had another show coming up, and no, I had no interest. No one rang me. I got nothing. So I ended up leaving acting school kind of in a daze, and spent a year going around Dublin, just trying to knock on doors everywhere, and no one wanted to know me. So I ended up moving back down to County Galway in my parents for 2 years. And I remembered in acting school, they said to us that if you're not getting work, create your own. And that always stuck in my head. And I used to write since I was very young. So I started writing plays. And my plays ended up being comedy plays, farcical slapstick plays, and tried to put them on, and had a little bit of success with them. I managed to get stage readings and everything. But then after doing all the plays, it's very hard to get a play on. I moved into film. I was about to give up, and then an ad popped up for Dublin Filmmakers, the group you went to 7 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago. And I walked through the threshold, and 5 weeks later, I'd written, co-produced, and acted in a music video for the oldest punk rock band in Ireland. And I realized how film can travel more than theatre. So I just kept making films with this group. And how I ended up doing stand-up then, it's a bit of a long-winded story, but I went back into writing performing plays, trying to invite agents, trying to get anywhere, and nothing was working. And I got very burnt out. And then I spotted a bursary. A bursary, is a scholarship in the US. We call them bursaries. And I thought, you know what? What's the ultimate one person play? Stand-up comedy. This is it. I'll create a play. This will be kind of a showcase. It's much easier than creating the previous plays I created were ensemble plays. And I applied for this scholarship because it means I wouldn't have to work as a receptionist. I'd have time to create this one-woman show, and about a stand-up comedian, kind of based in my life. And I got turned down from the scholarship. I thought, that's it. I'll put stand-up comedy to bed. That's it. I might as well give up. I wasn't feeling great. And then I went to this launch of a YouTube channel, and I wasn't going to go because it was around COVID time. Mm-hmm. And there was a guy in the room called Kieran McMahon, and he actually runs stand-up course. And I hadn't met him in the room. Just as I was leaving, my friend was talking to his friend, and Kieran had opened the door. And I ended up talking to him. I was telling him about how I failed to get a scholarship, and I realized he ran a course, a stand-up comedy course. And I couldn't afford to do another course I wanted to do previously with stand-up comedy, and he had offered a discount. And I was like, right, I'll sign up to this course. This is what I'll do. And and a few weeks later, I had started doing this 6-week thing, and I began to explore all this crazy stuff that had happened to me previously, all my failures and rejections, and put it into stand-up comedy. And I realized that it was a medium to tell my story in a comedic way, and use all those comedy things I had learned in the previous years. All that, there's a lot of rejection and failure along the way. And the thing I love about stand-up as well is it's very autonomous. It's like I can go out tonight. You don't have to spend 5 million weeks rehearsing like I had done previously. You can just go out and tell your story, and it's you up there. And I remember doing the showcase, and it was so nerve-wracking. It was really nerve-wracking. But I think the reason why I could do stand-up was because of my actor training, and also because at that point I felt I had nothing to lose. Like, I'd experienced so much rejection and failure up until doing stand-up comedy. I was like, what? I don't have anything to lose, So I remember when I went up on the stage, I nearly got sick beforehand, just to say. It wasn't easy. You have to quite throw yourself off. And I was telling my stories about my failures, and people laughed and responded. And I remember looking down to the audience and seeing these beautiful smiling faces. I thought it was magic. And then people come up to me afterwards. And ever since then, I've been hitting the stand-up circuit. And with stand-up after COVID, there's all these clubs opening in Dublin. And I just found I found that the community is so welcoming. Like they're so kind and embracing of people like myself who are new to stand-up. And the big comedians are coming down to the open mic circuit. So got to meet actors I admired, and I was supporting them, like comedy actors. And I just found it magic. And so I've been doing stand-up. I'm pretty new to stand-up, but that's kind of a condensed reason how I did stand-up. So that's how I ended up doing stand-up. A lot of other stuff happened in the
Yes.
middle.
A lot happened, and before you went to theater school, or what do you call it, theater, before you started acting
drama school in the UK, they call it
drama school, before you started going to drama school, what you were saying something about languages?
Yes, I did marketing and German and Spanish. I know what, I did German in school. I actually really liked German, but I was terrible at languages. I found them so hard. It was unreal. I know you speak Spanish. I don't really speak Spanish. I spent a year in Spain, but it was torture. I just couldn't get them into my head. I don't know.
Well, if you need some classes, I'll maybe do a YouTube video, and I'll start with making classes there. But so you were saying earlier how there was this Celtic tiger, and that how everyone had to go to school to be successful.
Yes.
So you kind of said, what the hell? I'll just take German and Spanish.
Yeah,
Was that
marketing.
it?
Well, it was like marketing as well, because it was a trendy thing to do. It was like at that time, or not now, but in Ireland at that time, it was considered, if you don't go to university, you're not going to do anything with your life. It was very different to now, but it was very different. Ireland was very different back then. I remember I spent a year in Spain. I remember going to economics class, and the milagro, I think milagro, miracle in Spanish, is it milagro?
Oh, milagro?
Milagro. See that? Milagro. So the teacher kept saying that to me, and he was like, Ireland, it's a miracle, your economy, because around that time, like, it was crazy in Ireland. Everyone had third houses, like they were buying stuff in Bulgaria, BMWs, and it was like you had to go to university. It's not like in the States where university costs like 50,000 a year. It was still reasonable, and you get like scholarships, grants, and in Ireland, but it was considered you had to go to university. And I wish I didn't go to university. I would have been better off going to catering school or something. I love baking at that time, or studying English or something, but I was in the complete wrong course, and I was very, very unhappy. That was a very unhappy time in my life.
So do you feel that, because there's a saying, fake it till you make it. Do you think if you would have faked it, you would have been happy in that career?
In
marketing and all that?
No, not whatsoever. I have a weird brain. I have a weird, and I own it now. But
I love it. I love it because there's an idea, and people, a lot of people who love me very much, they want me, go to school, be a doctor, or be this, be that. And me, I'm kind of like the rebel. And if I don't want to do something, it's like, I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry, but I've always felt that I've had another path in life. But so while you were on that journey, and I'm not putting down school. If anyone wants to go to school, go for it, but for me, especially, after I left the religious life, I'm still Catholic, but, for the listeners, after I left that environment, which was very dark, everyone wanted me to just rush to school, especially family, friends. And it wasn't the right time. I just wasn't in my, I didn't know what I liked. Did you choose school because you didn't know what else to choose? It was just kind of like a trend.
Yeah, it was. And that was the mentality back then in Ireland. Because I did like German in school, and I thought, oh yeah, marketing would be good with German. I'll do Spanish. I always wanted to learn Spanish, but I was so unhappy, and I was very sad. I feel very sad for my younger self, just really unhappy. And I'm from in Ireland, it's a bit derogatory term, but I'm considered a culchie. Basically, it's yeah, culchie, as we say. It's like people from the country. And I used to be scared of going to Dublin. I used to be scared of Dublin people because it's the big city. I know Dublin isn't that big, but when you're younger,
It's a big city.
it's a big city,
Yeah, it's a
and
big
it's
city. Yeah.
different accents, and compared to my accent. And I used to find it very intimidating, Dublin, and scary. And I went when I was 18 and moved up to Dublin, and I wasn't ready to move up to Dublin. I should have taken a year out or something, but it wasn't considered the right thing to do back then. It was just you should go to university, and I didn't know what to do. I suppose when you're young like that, you just don't know what to do, and you
Yeah.
kind of stick it out. But it's part of my life now, and I think maybe it did help in some way. Yeah, but it was really, really unhappy. Really unhappy time in university. Yeah.
Okay, so hearing your story,
Mm.
because I like stories. Who
Yeah,
doesn't like a good story? Who doesn't like a
yeah,
good movie or a good book? And as I'm listening to your story, I'm playing the movie in my mind.
yeah,
And you were saying that when you were a little girl, a little lass, I guess you call it
yeah.
lass, right?
Lass.
Um,
I'm kind of Scottish, but no, it's Irish people as well.
come on, right?
Lass,
So
young girl, young one, one.
you'd be within your household,
Mm.
you'd be free, you'd be making jokes, cracking jokes, you'd be writing. Am I getting
Yeah,
this right?
yeah. I used to write stories. I used to love writing short stories. And then when camping, I used to write comics. I used to draw little comic things and write
Okay.
comic. Yeah.
So you're gonna give me a copy later so I can share it to the world, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I'll have to go back and find them. They're somewhere.
So you had this passion,
Yeah.
it wasn't a full on fire, but maybe it was just a little ember, I'm guessing,
Yeah.
and then it got kind of
Do you know what's
buried.
weird? When I was 8, I was obsessed with Greece. And, I think John Travolta was like, my God. It was just, and it's very sad because Sandy passed away, Olivia
Yes,
Newton-John passed recently. But I was obsessed with it. And even our local town, our musical society did Grease. And I was in awe. And I bought the soundtrack and I listened to it a million times. And I wrote a play set around the Grease soundtrack. And I didn't know what I was doing. I actually didn't know what I was doing back then. It was kind of a natural thing. And I remember I physically wrote it, the play, and handing it to my dad, and he'd photocopy it at his workplace. And then we'd have myself and my close friends, we'd have a code name for rehearsals. I think it was Jeep or Van or something, or I don't know what it was. But and then we'd rehearse in my house, and it was just I remember I was also the director, I was the actor, I was the producer, I was everything.
You took care of everything. You were the cameraman.
I remember drinking coffee and being like directing everyone, and then I'd step in and then we'd play the soundtrack. I know what happened in the end. I think someone stole the soundtrack and we never put it on.
And
But if I could find that.
You were 8 years old at the time?
I think I was 8 or 8 or 9.
Now
But
that
I
is
did that
extremely young.
extremely young, but I didn't think about doing it. It was just, I think I heard something on the radio. Someone put on a play for their parents' friends. That came into my head, and my Grease obsession. But it was a very natural thing. It wasn't like, oh, I will write a play. I just thought, I'm obsessed with Grease. I will write a play. But it was always there, that thing inside. But see, to my friends, I was like that. But to everyone outside my friends, like in school, I was a person who would never talk. So it was always there. It was like I was two different people. It was like I wasn't comfortable in my own skin, really. But my very close friends, I could show them who I am. It was very strange. Yeah.
I don't think it's strange because I think that there's so many people out there who want to do something. I'll give an example. Like they're itching to travel abroad. They've been itching, and then they just forget about it, and then those things never happen. For me, I love to travel, and I just go. I mean, I met you in Dublin, and I like to chase my dreams.
Mm.
And it seemed like at that young age, it's very young, but you
Mm.
already had a natural dream that was just coming,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
just flowing in you through writing. And as you were saying, you were directing. And at 8 years old, you were already drinking coffee.
I know. I think it was 8 or 9. I know it's really bad.
That
I have
explains
it's a lot
all the energy that you have
of
today,
energy, I
right?
know. But it was mad. But I still, if only I could find that play now. Imagine, I don't know where it went to. If we could find a copy of it somewhere. It's funny.
folks, folks,
What?
stay tuned. We're
Yeah.
gonna
Do you know
get
what's
that
weird as
play.
well? So I know you trained as a priest, but I actually won a prayer competition when I was doing confirmation in sixth class in school. I was 12, and we had to write a prayer. And I remember at our confirmation, the priest said, "This is the winner of the prayer competition." And it was mine. It was my prayer. And you know what? I was met a guy I went to school with around 2 years ago, and he kept that prayer, and it's still sitting in his room. Isn't that mad?
And do you have a
Isn't
copy of that, of
I
your
must get it
writing?
up because I don't know where I must get. I remember, oh, Holy Spirit was the start of it, but it was like, so I always had that creativity. It was there all the time. Yeah, inside.
Okay, I love that you mentioned that you always had this creativity.
Yeah.
Because like there are some people whom I love very much, but now
Mm.
that I'm, I guess, blossoming in the field of podcasting, it's like, whoa, where is this coming from? But the truth is, it's always been deep within. But I want to ask you,
Mm.
from 8 years old, then there was like a just nothing when it came
Yeah.
to your acting, writing. What
Yeah.
happened? Did anything
So
kill the dream?
yeah, I don't I kind of had a hard time in school. I was bullied in school and ostracized, and I found that very hard. And yeah, like I remember, I don't know if you know, if people, your listeners know Dancing at Lunasa. It's a very famous Irish play. It's a film as well with Glenn Close. It's an Irish film. And we had this we in Ireland we have a thing called transition year, and it's where you kind of do create, like you do a play and you go on adventures and stuff. And I remember they had auditions for Dancing at Lunasa, and I didn't get it a part, and my part was a prop. I just had to watch a clock. I basically are all the props. You know what I mean? It was just, and it was so heartbreaking. And I think what happened in my later teenage years, I kind of went into my shell very much, very much so. And I actually got sick when I was 17, ended up in hospital for 5 weeks, which is but I came out of that, and I just kind of shut down my creativity, and I don't know what happened. It was like it just went in, and I couldn't, it wasn't there, until I saw sparks of it later on when I was in university. And I think I started experiencing like bad anxiety, just really bad. And I was just very unhappy in, like, say, my late teens, early 20s. I was a very unhappy person. And it's only now, I looking back, I realize it. And even when I went to university, I struggled to make friends. It was too much of an adjustment. I should have just left. But again, that time in Ireland was, you have to stick it out. This
Yeah.
is because otherwise you'll have no job, no life. But yeah, it's like I lost my creativity for a few years. But yeah, it took a good few years to get it back. Yeah.
I find this very it doesn't sound like you, because
Yeah.
going back to when I walked into the was it the bar or wherever we met
Yeah,
up,
the hotel, yeah.
the hotel, and you were vibrant, you were in control of the
Yeah,
conversation. And then to
yeah,
hear about this version of you that was kind of like, as you said, shelled up, closed
yeah.
off. And you mentioned that you were experiencing bullying and
Yeah.
ostracizing. Can you kind of
Very
further
much so.
elaborate to the audience how that affected you at
Oh,
that time?
at that time and later on as well, it affected me a lot. Anyone who's experienced bullying, or especially ostracization, it's isolating, it's paralyzing. You think, oh sure, if I was being bullied, I would speak up. Do you know what I mean? But when you're actually in that situation, you oftentimes don't recognize it. You think, oh, it's me, I'm too sensitive. It's lonely, it's sad, yeah, and it can destroy you, bullying, if you're not careful, and it has so many people, and it's yeah, I feel very sad for my younger self, that I didn't tell people, I didn't look for help, because but when you're young and you're in that situation, it is so paralyzing, and you forget that when you're removed from the situation, because you can't speak up, you're frozen. And that bullying had a massive impact on my life, massive. Yeah.
Now, I'm able to relate, and I'm sure many in the audience, because many of the audience have been hurt through cult abuse, domestic abuse, and I've recently had a few like Jehovah Witnesses. You know, I love them, but the ex Jehovah Witnesses have been telling me incidences of being shunned, or they'll call it disfellowshipped, and in my case, you know, leaving the community, there is a narrative, because you know bullying does happen even in the
Yeah,
religious life,
absolutely.
and there is this narrative that, you know, I'm like good for nothing, worth nothing, and
Yeah.
that stays with you. And I'm not sure about in your experience, but did the bullying, you know, all the harsh words that they said, did it ever at any point become almost like hypnotic?
Yes. And funny, I have this thing in my head, like, you know, those merry-go-rounds with the chairs, you know, those things you see in
This
fairgrounds.
okay.
And it's like,
Yeah.
was happening to me, all those things people said to me or happened to me, it was like that merry-go-round would activate, and each chair would be something, a memory or a saying or something said to me, and it would start swinging around. And then when I was able to control it, it was like the image in my head was a merry-go-round in a fairground that's completely abandoned, and it's stopped and it's rusted. And that's when those memories, I'm in a really good place, but I sometimes that merry-go-round does activate, and it could be a saying, or it could be someone I'd speak to whose personality or something reminds me of something. So I still get that slightly, but not as much. And it can be extremely hurtful. Extremely. Like, I had a really bad instance when I was in university. People I thought were my friends, they played an April Fool's joke on me, and I remember when they said April Fools, I'm feeling so humiliated, but hiding it. Because when I sometimes I smile when I'm trying to hide, like, not now, but when I was younger,
Yeah.
I actually love, I do like being there, But I remember running to the library because I was crying, and one of the people who did that to me went up to me and said, "God, you took that very well. Are you okay?" And I still remember that, and still remember happening. And those people who did that, I'm sure they're married with kids, and they would never in a million years think of me. But I often think of that, and I feel so sorry for that person, because it was only recently I told someone what happened to me, because I didn't tell people about stuff that happened to me. And I found in my journey to healing, it bullying and stuff like that, by speaking, and people tell me their stories, it's a very healing thing. But yeah, it's definitely not easy as well when you have those memories. But as long as that merry-go-round is faded and rusted, full of dust, it's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
So I can
you don't
describe
want
it
it
as,
spinning. Yeah,
yeah, rather than spinning around, So
but
yeah.
but sometimes it, like you said, sometimes someone or something can
Yeah.
activate it.
Yeah. It
Um,
reminds me. Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you found a platform
Mhm.
which can, you know, be like, as I mentioned earlier, so nerve-wracking, and that is
Yeah.
stand-up
Yeah.
comedy. Um, and you know, talking to you, you were saying kind of like how before you went up the stage, you were like, "Feck it, I'm just gonna go and do it."
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it's
but but didn't when you said feck it, I'm just gonna go do it. Did that merry-go-round, start moving in your mind a little bit?
No, no, the complete opposite. It was like I found the more I pushed myself to do out of these comfort zones, the more I found that merry-go-round started disappearing. It was like haven't I so lucky? Or when I start before I go on do stand up, I say to myself, haven't I so lucky to be able to be here and do this? Because those people who did that to me and the bullying and all that, they wouldn't have the guts. I know that for a fact. They wouldn't have the guts to stand up here and do stand up. Um, so in a way, it's kind of like healing for me. Or if I'm before I go on a theater, do theater, in one way, I know bullying can have detrimental effects, and it did in my life as well. But it's like fuel for the fire in one way as well. I'm like, haven't I so lucky? Look, I can do this. It kind of made me fearless in one way, in a very weird way, bullying. Because when you've been humiliated and you've been there, what's the worst can happen? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In one way, yeah.
So did theater kind of help build your spiritual muscles, I guess you could say? Like, did it help shape you?
Absolutely. Because with acting, I get to experience a million lives that aren't mine. Like I get to step into the world of like I adore writing. I really do. I love coming up with characters. And I find when I create characters, they become so real to me. They're like they're other people. And I have a part in my head where all my characters I've created are sitting and they're kind of waiting for me to pull them out. It's a very strange thing, but I'm putting parts of my life into their life, but also creating something else. And some of my characters have a lot bigger problems than my life. And then with acting, what I adore about acting is I get to explore the human condition. Like I get to step in to these characters and figure out what makes them tick, like why do they hold themselves a certain way? Why do they talk like that? Why? I just thought it's very empowering acting in one way. It's magic because it makes you explore the human condition, and sometimes it makes you explore yourself and analyze your own life and why it's fascinating. I just find it fascinating. Yeah.
That's very deep. Wow, I've been part of Meetup, the
Yeah.
Meetup app, and I've started off with writing. So
Okay.
I've been doing writing, and I go to different groups here in San
Mm.
Antonio, and we sit down and we write, and then if someone chooses to, we'll talk about each other's writing. And
Mhm.
I noticed that like each author is different. Each writer has their own creativity. But like
Yeah.
when it comes to characters, at least most of the authors or writers whom I've encountered,
Mm.
each character is like there's something, you put as a writer, you put so much attention and
Yeah.
love into this person. And well, I did the writers meetup, then I went to the filmmakers, and then I've done podcasting meetups.
Mm.
And it just, for me, creativity has helped me
Mm.
to face my demons, to face my
Yeah.
dragons. And now I'm doing the podcast, and that is sometimes so difficult because I have to be vulnerable. And
Yeah.
you mentioned something earlier that you went to do the stand up, and people started laughing, and then you saw that the audience was actually very welcoming. How did that
Yes.
feel when the audience was welcoming, and instead of them ostracizing you or bullying you, did you feel at home, or how was the emotion?
You know what? Very much at home because we all have when you're doing stand up and theater as well, particularly stand up because with theater you don't really have to look the audience in the eyes. With
Yeah.
stand up you do, which is obviously more nerve-wracking, but you're in the room together and you're having a collective experience. That's what I describe it as. And it's magic to have the ability to make people laugh. And just, I remember when I'm doing stand up and I'm saying a joke and I look into the audience and I see they're smiling at me. The energy I get off them is just magic. And it's like a comfort thing. Even though before you go on the stage and stand up and the MC is saying, "Oh, now here we've Claire Millane," I feel like, "Oh my God, what am I doing? Why am I here? Ah!" And then the second I go on, it's like, ah.
Okay.
It's hand to myself. But I do think sometimes when I have to go to stand up gig, oh my God, why do I do this to myself? But then when I'm there and doing it, it is so good. And you're experiencing a collective experience, and it's immediate feedback as well with stand up. You will, they will laugh at your jokes. Sometimes they won't actually,
Yeah.
which is kind of, we look down, it's blank faces, but that's part of it. Yes, part of stand up, we see the blank faces, and that happened to me as well. A few
But
times.
you roll with it.
You roll with it. I think with stand up, I love watching their people, like the people who are very professional, high professionals, this famous people doing stand up, and they still get nervous, terribly nervous, and that's part of it. You just roll with it. You're going to have good nights, going to have bad nights. People won't laugh at your jokes sometimes, but if you accept that as a stand up, that's just part of it. It's part of the journey. Yeah, it's as I said, it's lovely to be part of someone's night out. I don't drink before I do stand up. I have a beer afterwards, but before I drink, I don't drink. Like some stand-ups drink on stage. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't
Yeah.
risk it. But the fact I can go up and I can look down at people and they have a drink in their hand and they're laughing and they're smiling. I remember I did one gig and it was a new set I was working on, and I was so nervous beforehand. And because I know my material inside out, to me it's not funny because I know the punchlines. And you begin to think as a stand-up, is this even funny? I don't know. And I was saying that to myself going on, okay, Claire, it's like because I'm bringing my actor training in it as well. With actor training, what you do is prepare, prepare, prepare. And that always went through my head. I can't be a stand-up, go on stage with notes. I couldn't do that. I have to prepare.
Yeah.
So as long as I've done the work when stand-up, I'll feel more comfortable going on. But remember that one night when I was doing this new set, I was so nervous. But then I said, again, feck it. I'll just throw myself out there. What's the worst can happen? And I went on and they roared laughing. And I looked down and there was a couple on the front row, big smiles in their face. And one of the couple came up to me afterwards and she held my hands and she said, "Wow," and I thought, oh my God, I was in shock. He said, "Wow, you're terrific." And I just thought, oh my God, from something that I thought wasn't funny or wasn't going to work to going on stage, it's those moments that make it worth it for me. But of course that won't always happen. The next night you'll go on, no one will laugh.
Yeah. But you know what
We'll
you're
never
doing.
forget it. What is it?
You know what you're doing is you're bringing happiness, hope
That's
to people, or you're bringing light. And the thing is that
it.
you were saying those assholes out there, those bullies, and we've all had bullies in our life.
Absolutely.
They've wanted to keep you down. They had a good laugh at you.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and we were talking about it, or I mentioned it to you, how like in that movie Carrie, I'm not sure if you've ever seen it.
Yes, I have. Yes.
How she flips out and then she goes and starts like you know um hurting everybody,
Yeah,
violence, but you're
yeah,
using that bullying as fuel, like a fire, to make people laugh. And
yeah.
that's amazing, because like in my podcast, it's not easy. It's not
I know.
easy, being in front of the camera. It's not easy holding a mic. And I didn't go to a whole bunch of years of like film school or theater. I just, vamonos, let's go do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but it's always it brings me warmth when someone tells me, "Hey Ryan, I really like what you said, that on this episode. It helped me think a little bit deeper, or it brought some peace." It just, all the hard work. There are so many failures that I've been through, and
Yeah.
as a creator, hearing that you've been through failures,
Oh my
it,
God.
it gives me a little peace. It's like, ooh, I'm not alone in the boat. But it just brings satisfaction when I hear your story of
Mhm.
people, saying how, wow, you were amazing. But were there any people, during your film, during your theater, who said the opposite about maybe, oh, you're horrible, you're terrible,
Yeah.
you suck?
Yeah. So when I left acting school, when I was leading up to my showcase in acting school, I was on a high because just people pointing out. I remember one actress who was well-known Irish actress. She pointed me out to be the ones who would be successful, and I was so taken aback, thinking, "This is it now. This my life will change." And when no one rang me and no one wanted me after going 2 years of brutal hard training, and before that I was years training doing community theater and working in that other theater, so it was a long journey, and for it not to work out, like it was absolutely devastating. It was heartbreaking, and I had to hide it in one way because I felt guilty after my parents gave me the inheritance money to go. I felt ashamed even that I went through the school. I couldn't make it work. And I had to move back with my parents. And I remember going to the post office at the time, posting out at that time we used to post out headshots to everyone. I went back to my teacher and I was like, "Oh, is there anything else I can do?" And he said, "No, you're doing everything okay." And no one wanted to know me. And then I got this email from this casting, I call her casting director. She's not in the industry anymore, just to say. But I got this email saying she wanted to meet me. And I was thinking, oh my God, this is it now. This is the moment. This is what you read about. When you read these celebrity bios and they've been through horrible times, like actors, and then someone says, "Oh yeah, come out for dinner," or come into this casting, and then everything changes. So I thought this was me. I remember Googling how things will change when the casting director other stories. And I thought this was my moment, the one I've been reading about. And I went in and I went through the piece I was doing, and she put on the camera, and the nerves hit me and I fluffed a line. And then she started getting a bit annoyed. And then I had the script down in front of me, but then she wouldn't let me look at the script. So I lost my place and I fluffed another line, and the nerves ramped up another gear, and just everything. In your head, sometimes you think, oh no, it's just worse in your head. But this was worse in reality than my head.
Oh my
Do you know what I mean? Because the way you always think, oh yeah, sure, it's in your head and reality is much better. This was a total opposite. It was like my reality was 100 times worse than in my head. And she started getting really angry. And when I'm kind of nervous, sometimes I smile, and I can't help it. It's just something I do, or reflex. And she's like, "Stop smiling." And I was like, the nerves just went out of control, and I started shaking. And then she said, "You're horrific. I can't believe how horrific. Oh, I can't. Was it? You're horrific. You don't realize how horrific you are." And it was like this person I tried to get to see for years. I'm thinking this is my big break, thinking what all I've read about just went up in flames. And in my head, I could see the years of actor training, the brutal rejection, my parents' support, my grandparents passed on support, go up in flames. Everything I'd worked up to that point, it just disappeared. It was like I'd blown it big time, And I remember coming out of that audition and just crying my eyes out, running up the street. I was so devastated that this had just happened. And I think I had a panic attack as well. And I remember, it's funny, the next day I got very sick. It was like my body had given up. So when you're very sick, you're kind of a bit hazy and you don't feel right in your head. So I went home to County Galway, and I remember laying in bed really sick. So at least I didn't have to think about it as much. But it was so devastating. When I got a bit better a week later, it kind of hit me. And I just didn't know what to do. I thought I was finished. I thought I let everyone down because this person is casting these things. and I wouldn't have a hope of ever getting into theatre again. And I remember she told me, she said, go away and buy yourself a camera, film it, and film your piece and send it on to me. And I'm thinking maybe I could redeem myself a little bit. So I remember I went out and bought a camera. I filmed myself. My brother helped me and sent it off, and she never even replied to me. But it probably took me 5 years to get over that. And I remember going into other auditions and I'd start violently shaking and sweating and feeling like I was having a panic attack. And I couldn't go near that place where she was. And I remember used to sit in a cafe, and sometimes the odd time she would be there talking to another actor. And I couldn't even look at her. I couldn't even, it was a horrific situation. And I was thinking, how can I become a professional actor if I can't do an audition? Do you mean, I know I can act, I can do some acting, could be through acting school, but I have this massive barrier to how I can't do it. I can't do an audition without violently shaking and sweating and having a panic attack. So the only way I could do it was by creating my own parts myself and my own work. And but it took me years. It took me like 5 years. And how I got my confidence back was by meeting kind people. I met some lovely, kind casting directors who would never in a million billion years do that. And this year particularly, there's some lovely casting directors who've been so kind, and everyone who works with this person, and so kind to me, so generous. And I did this. There's a great casting director in the UK, and he doesn't know this, right? I think I'm going to message him at some stage. And he set up this casting thing online to help actors with auditioning. And I came across it. And even if you can't afford to pay him, and it's very cheap actually, it's you can pay as little as you want, So I started doing his courses, and I started getting my confidence back. And I realized I can audition. I can do this. And that man who's did this for actors, he doesn't know how much he helped me. And I'm waiting till I get a big part to message him and to thank him. And he is the most generous man. He has changed. He could change a lot of people's lives, but for auditioning, he's helped me so much, and he won't even know it, by setting up this thing, this online auditioning thing to train actors. But it was a horrible experience to go through. And I didn't tell anyone for probably 3 or 4 years. And when I started telling people, they were shocked. And I think similar things happened to them as well. So usually these people, they don't do it to one person, they do it to all people. And just casting people and people like that in the industry, that person probably never thought of me again. But think about the massive, crazy, horrible impact that person had on me, and probably other people I don't know about. It was a horrible experience to go through. But it's interesting now because I'm older and I have a lot more experience. I see it for what it is and see it's their problem. It's kind of like, and I'm very protective of other actors. And even with the film group, with the film group I'm in, I said to them recently, listen, if anyone is bullying, you feel like bullying you feel like you've been mistreated, tell someone quietly, tell me, as I don't want people to experience that, any other actor to experience that. Yeah.
So now you're using your position in the Dublin filmmakers to kind of go against that bullying environment.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Is there a lot of bullying in the filmmakers world, or was it just that lady?
No, it is rampant. It is, unfortunately, bullying is absolutely rampant in the industry. And it's and when you're a young actor, you think you have to put up with it. You think this is people say, oh, you have to grow a thick skin, and it's funny, there was a girl there was a theatre company I really wanted to get into. It was a new writing theatre company, and I had written a show and I wanted to get into it. And for some reason, I couldn't get my show on in there. And eventually, when I was going to get on, the theatre closed down for maintenance during the 2 weeks I was putting my show on. I didn't know why. I just couldn't get in. But some guardian angel was protecting me. It was definitely, I didn't know that until very recently. Because I read an article about a girl who worked for that theatre company, and she said how toxic it was. She to come out and get counseling. Like, she had panic attacks working in that theatre. And I didn't know that until 2 weeks ago, and it's so rampant. And it's like, I've been on the receiving end of horrible messages, especially if you're producing stuff. If you're a producer, you're the number one target, because if an actor or something isn't happy, you'll be the one getting these abusive messages. But there is so much bullying going on, and they've tackled it a lot. There was even a report sent to the Irish government about bullying in the industry. It is so rampant. But if you're a young any actor, old, young, don't put up with it. Tell someone quietly. If you're a member of a union, tell them. Sometimes the unions are the bullies. Sometimes they're on the board. So you have to be careful, But it's unfortunately, bullying is rampant in this industry, and you do not have to put up with it if you're an actor or a filmmaker or a writer, anything in the creative industry, because in the insecure industry, it attracts people, that maybe shouldn't work in it. Some people think that creativity, well, it does solve, some maybe can't solve problems, but they think, say, being an actor will solve their problems, and it won't. Do you know what I mean? It won't. Yeah.
So is there anywhere where a person who has been a victim of bullying, or maybe who's going through a mental crisis in the filmmaking world, is there somewhere that they can get help?
Yes. So in Ireland, there's this brilliant organization called Minding Creative Minds, and it's an amazing organization that provides free counseling to the creative industry. So this actors, writers, musicians, stagehands, they can get free counseling through this organization. They can tell their stories. I don't know in the US if you have something like that, and if there isn't, they should set one up. But well, you can go to your union as well. And there was a meeting, and they did say, if you're being bullied, tell us. But sometimes you don't want to go to a union. You maybe, because Minding Creative Minds is this terrific organization which are there to help people, because it's such an insecure industry. It's important to talk to someone, and counseling can be very expensive. And if you're an actor or writer, you're not earning much money. So they give free counseling. Even talking to your friends. Because I found when I started opening up to other people within my circle, they were telling me their stories because they felt ashamed. They thought it was them, but it's not. Just tell someone. But don't stay quiet. It's not you. Don't put up with it as a young actor. It's rubbish. You don't have to have a thick skin. You don't have to go through horrible bullying. It's like, there's other actors. I think there's an actor called Gillian Michaels. She talks about Juilliard and stuff happening there. And there's other drama schools as well that there's a lot of bullying going on within them. And I must say, when I went, I had a terrific time. I were very kind and supportive, but I have done other courses outside drama school where the teachers are absolute bullies, and it's they and also some acting classes, they attract vulnerable people because they want to try acting, and they're kind of vulnerable, and teachers sometimes think they can mock them or humiliate them. And there's a lot of that going on in acting classes. Oh, not just in Ireland, but in the US, it's 100 times worse. Teachers think they can humiliate people. And there was one of my friends came to me, and it was a woman I dealt with previously, and she was really not nice to me. But she said she spent the previous night crying her eyes out because the same woman, what she was doing to her and people within her class. It's rampant, especially in acting classes, and it's not right, because when you're in acting class, you have to be vulnerable, you have to be open, and some of these teachers abuse their positions. And it happens in dance classes as well. There's horrific stuff. We probably heard some famous cases. But yeah, it's yeah, hard.
So
It's
this
something
is
you have to navigate, you know?
very eye-opening because I didn't know any
Yeah,
of this stuff.
yeah,
And hearing your story, especially, as we've gone along, I
mhm,
see like it's like there's so much like the negativity,
yeah,
and then, you have like, you have people who are kind of like rooting for you. How, you
yeah,
had your grandparents and
yeah,
even your parents, who
yeah,
were supportive. There are other parents who would be like, Claire, I'm disappointed in you. Come on, like how, like why film school, or why this, why that, and for them to be supportive. I mean, round of applause for your
yeah.
parents to
I'm very,
actually.
very lucky. I'm very lucky. My dad, I'm very
Really.
close to my dad actually, and he's the most. But my dad is so kind, so amazing, and my champion. You know, he's. I remember when I was remember with one remember one rejection I got. He got me this bookmark saying "Don't quit." There's a famous kind of not poem but a saying, and he sent me that. Gave that to me, you know. And we have these amazing conversations. Like I live in Dublin, but I often go home to County Galway, and we have these amazing. We always go for drives, you know,
Yeah.
around. We go to the shop and stuff, you know. And we just have these amazing conversations. And he's very religious, my dad. But he even gets people to pray for me and stuff, you know, priests and stuff, you know. And he's like, "Don't worry, this is your year." And you know, I'm so lucky in that respect. And I realize how lucky I am because not everyone has that, you know. But if you can find it with your friends, if there's an aunt, if there's a grandparent, and my grandparents passed away before they realized, but even I feel their spirit, you know what I mean? I feel their spirit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
um but it's, yeah, but not everyone will have that. But if you can, even if you have a bunch of friends, you can find that, or you know, someone, it's a comfort to have it. Yeah.
And so, talking about friends, you said, I think 7 years ago you found the meetup.
Yes, it
What
changed my life.
how did it change your life? What was like your life before stepping in?
Yeah. So basically, you know, it's kind of a weird thing when you've done everything possible. Do you know, I don't know if you ever worked in something and you've done everything physically possible and still not working out. And there's kind of a comfort in that, but also a frustration. And with acting, trying to make it as a professional actor, I'd done everything possible in my, I needed a bit of luck. It's a dash of luck. And I feel like, but I wasn't getting that bit of luck. So when I'd done everything possible, I kind of at a stage where I can't do anymore. And I was kind of giving up in one way. And I remember sitting at this temping job, just feeling very down. And for some reason, an email came into my inbox about a meetup.com. What's this thing about? I clicked on it, and that night there was a meeting in a pub and it said film making. I thought, oh, interesting. And I was going to go to the theater that night. And I said to myself, will I go to the theater or will I go to this thing? And where I was staying, it was around the corner. And I just said, I remember saying to myself specifically, no, I'll go to this thing. I'll cross the threshold. If I don't like it, I'll just get up and leave. So it was in kind of a bit of a dodgy pub originally, not where I met you. So I remember I just took a deep breath and crossed the threshold, and I met my best friends. It changed my life. It was like that. It was like someone was guiding me to join the group, because it's very strange the way it happened. Like, why did that pop up in my email? Like, was the pub around from where I was staying? Why was it on that night? You know, it was like someone was saying, "Don't worry, Claire, this is what you're meant to do." And I remember there was two guys there who became very good friends of mine, and I just connected with them. And one of them said about a band is looking for you know, a music video, and I realized that I wrote. And then we used to meet up in coffee shops, and we'd do out little storyboards for the band's song. And then 5 weeks later, we'd written, produced, and I acted in a music video.
Well,
And that's
really?
how it started. 5 weeks. It was very strange. That was from idea to shoot to edit. That was very strange, and I couldn't believe it. And then I started going every week. And even I wasn't even living in Dublin at the time, so I used to travel up in the bus. It's 2.5 hours to Dublin from where I live, and 2.5 hours home. And there was always an incident on the bus on the way home. It was like a late bus, so people were drunk and stuff. But I used to kind of listen in and get like lots of stories, you know.
Yeah.
But that's how it started. And then I found a place to live through where I'm living now was through someone I went in the filmmaking club. But what's really weird though, every time I say I'm giving up, something happens even the next day. Even recently, I was just a bit down and I was like, that's it. I can't continue. And then the very next day I got a casting for a big audition. The very next morning, I don't even have an agent, just to say. It was just directly from the casting director. And the same thing there. I didn't get one of the scholarships. And the very next morning, I got someone approached me for writing for a character, an animation. You know, it was like it was weird. It was weird. But that filmmaking club changed my life. And it was funny, like I know when what did you feel like when you went to the filmmaking club? Were you nervous or
Well,
uh,
I was nervous because
yeah,
one, I'm in the foreign country. Two,
yeah, of course.
it's like I have no experience. Well, I have
Mhm.
been around filmmakers. You know, I am
Mhm.
from California, and I've met filmmakers, and but I've never. It's like, I've never worked with filmmakers, if that makes sense. So I
Yeah.
saw y'all like gods, and I'm just there, like, and then I see you all vibrant, and you're very eloquent in your speech, and I'm
Thank
like,
you.
what the hell am I doing here? Golly. And
Yeah.
then but then y'all were so welcoming, you and Jules, I believe his name is.
Use. Yeah,
He
yeah,
was super cool and very articulate in the project that was happening. And so it it did. I don't want to say it sounded easy. It I it felt welcoming. Sometimes
that's good. Good
I
to
get
know.
I get what do you call it? Even as a podcaster, I sometimes try to avoid mumbling because
Yeah, oh, I can mumble. I'm very mumbly. I'm just sometimes I can't speak either.
oh man, so like after a while, usually I'll like pause, and then I'll continue my podcast after a little warm up.
Yeah,
But we're recording live here, so but yeah, I felt so much warmth, and I got to meet everyone,
yeah.
and it was exciting. It was just, and it's
And
opened more doors for me because when I came back to San Antonio, I went to the theater here, and I made friends with the actors and the director, and they're like, "Come on and join us." They're like, "Come on." And little did I know they're training me to do like a stand-up improv, and that's
an
not
improv. Oh my God,
it.
amazing.
It's an experience, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah,
Do you know
anyways,
what's funny? When everyone who's new feels the exact same, and I felt like that 7 years ago. I was like, what the heck am I doing? Just cross the threshold. It's like there's like throwing yourself off a bridge with a bungee jump, of course,
okay,
and
okay.
you're like, it's like that with the filmmakers. I see everyone new who comes in and they're like, oh hi. And then 2 weeks later, like, how you doing, Claire? Are you okay? It was just amazing. And then they're like your best friends. It's such a magic club. And we have everything from professionals to complete newbies. There's no like it doesn't matter. Some clubs are like, oh no, you have to be this, that, and the other. We're not like that at all. We're like, whoever you are, come in, have a cup of tea and chat. That's what I always say to them. We don't have to, no pressure.
It was very welcoming, but I have to admit, um, because I do go through social anxiety. People think that I'm this social butterfly. I do have my own mountains that I am trying to
Mhm.
climb. And so I called up my friend Daniel, great
Yeah.
guy. He's from Cork. And I was like, dude, come with me. And he's like, no, I don't think so. I'm like, come on, man. And it turns out that he's also into filmmaking, and it's like it was just perfect for the both of us. and then seeing Daniel, just his creative mind, going. That was just it was a as the Irish like to say, it was a grand experience.
Yeah, a grand experience. And that's what it is. And that's why, like, with creativity, it can change lives. Like, it can save lives. Like, it really can. Being like, be it writing, filmmaking, painting. And some people don't tap into it, but it can actually save and change lives. It really can. And I think the Irish government are recognizing that now. They're giving more scholarships, and we have this basic artist income, which is they're giving artists a basic income. I was in the lottery. I didn't get it, of course. I failed to get it. So I'm still working as a receptionist, to, hopefully I wanted to work a receptionist all the time. But well, the Irish government are recognizing it. It's quite weird in Ireland because we had a Celtic Tiger, which was when everything was booming and people were buying 2 or 3 houses. It was crazy. But then we had a massive recession where people were losing their jobs and they were emigrating, and it was kind of a horrible time in Ireland. But for the arts just thrived. People had so much time, they started writing, acting, getting involved in stuff. And same with COVID. A lot of creative stuff happened during COVID. People reconnected with things. Like, it's like after COVID, there's loads of comedy clubs opening now.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But it is, I know in your experience with creativity, I don't know if you find the same with any creative endeavors. You can change lives. And
Well, I mean, just doing the podcast has been,
yeah.
life changing for me. And it's like how you were saying earlier, how you felt so welcomed by the community at Stand Up.
Oh
When
yeah.
I walked into the world of podcasting, and now I'm getting into YouTube, but when I walked into the world, I came with no expectations. I just wanted to record. And if you listen to the first episodes, it's very at times dark and unprofessional, but that's how I learned. And then I started networking and meeting people over the internet, people in the UK, in America, all over America, Ireland. And so it's been quite a journey, but I feel so much happier doing this than maybe doing something else, because I was working full time at another job. It was a great job. I liked it, but I didn't love it, and it was like always itching within me. It was like bothering me that I felt that I'm called to something else.
Yeah.
And hearing your story about how you did the marketing, German, and you almost perfected Spanish. Is that
Oh,
what you said?
totally. I did.
But
Oh,
there was
just
always this, this fire
yeah.
to do something else.
Yeah.
But going through your story, I pay attention how
Mm,
all that bullying, ostracizing,
mm,
from hearing your story, it seemed like that took away. But
yeah,
now that you're doing stand-up comedy, you're owning your narrative, you're owning. And then
absolutely.
now people aren't, well, this is the tricky thing, because like bullies, they like to laugh at you.
Yes.
But now that it's all under your control, people are laughing at you and with you, or how does that
Yeah,
work?
it's very strange because you think like if you were bullied, people would laugh at you, you wouldn't go into comedy. But you'll notice a lot of comedians have been severely bullied. And Chris Rock is a really good example of that. I love Chris Rock. I must say, I only discovered his comedy after the infamous slap. I went and kind of went down a tunnel of Chris Rock stuff. I think he's brilliant. And I remember he did an interview, I'm not sure, some American TV show, and he talks about he was horrifically bullied. And I think a lot of comedians have that background, and actors as well. I think they say acting is a shy man's revenge, don't they? 'Cause I used to be
Yeah.
shy, but it's like I still am slightly. But yeah, with comedy, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. It's, as you said, it's probably like I know you're not in control as well, but it's like therapy or something. It's like even like not just stand up, but with when I create sketches. Like I did a filmmaking weekend there, And I created this. I don't know if you have blind dates. We used to have this blind dates. It's like a dating program. It's a very famous thing. It was in the UK and Ireland with this woman called Cilla Black. But I created a spoof on that and a character called Shirley Valentine. So I kind of melted them together, and it was a sketch. And we had a screening of all the films, and my film was shown. And I was sitting at the back, and I was really nervous, and I couldn't believe it. People screamed laughing, and I played all the characters. It was like I did everything. It was kind of a spoof thing, so I didn't have time to get other actors involved. So I played like 5 different characters, all the accents. And I love doing that. I love disguising myself with wigs and doing different accents that's not me, so people don't recognize me. I remember one of the girls was like, "Who's that guy?" And it was actually me. She thought it was a guy with a wig on. And I thought that was magic. But just sitting in the back of the room and watching people roaring, laughing at my characters, and they're rooting for the characters. And I just thought, isn't that magic? It is. The only word I can describe it as is magic. And same with stand-up. I know it is me, but it's kind of a curated version, because stand-up isn't as scary as you think, as the audience think, because it is fairly rehearsed. But obviously you have to be open to stuff happening. Audience members doing weird stuff. But there's a technique to it as well. And you if you learn stand-up or do a course, or you'll see there's a bit of a technique to it. So it's not as scary as people think, but it is. I don't know what it is. They must do scientific experiments on comedy, but there's some part of your brain that must light up, that just, maybe it's the creativity or it's something, but I don't feel like people laugh at me and I was bullied. It was like, it's this beautiful energy. People laugh, not a condescending laughter. It's like they're laughing. It's joyous laughter, is the way I describe it. And it's magic. Like, I don't take that for granted, because a lot of people wouldn't do stand-up, or they wouldn't do acting. And you do have to kind of, sometimes I am quite shy, and the shyness comes back, and I just sometimes have to push that aside and just throw myself off the bridge again. I can describe it. But I just think everyone should try stand-up at least once in their life. They mightn't go back to it, because my friend, a very good friend of mine, I thought he'd be a great stand-up, and he did a course, and did the stand-up showcase, and he said he'd never do that again. That's what he said to me.
Not everyone can do it.
No, and it's weird, because I am so lucky. I'm so lucky to have this creative side of myself, because I don't know who I'd be without that. Like, I'm so lucky. And maybe it's something I don't know, born with, or something cultivated. But because I get to see, I because I write and do comedy, I kind of look at life 360. I notice that when I'm with other friends who are not filmmakers, they don't see things in the world that I would see. And I love being that. But sometimes what's celebrated in the creative community is not celebrated in the work, like normal 9-to-5 community. So it can be tricky. It can be tricky like that as well,
That's what I think that hopefully the audience loves that about you. I love that about you, is that despite everything you've been through, right now, you're able to own your life. You're able to own who you are. And girl, keep on shining. Keep on being that happy person who brings joy to others. And to wrap this up, what words of wisdom can you share from your experience to other filmmakers or actors or writers who are going through, let's say, bullying or ostracization? Or if you could even talk to younger Claire, what are some words of wisdom you would share?
You know what? Be kind to yourself. Be your best friend. Because if you be kind to yourself and treat yourself with respect and with love, and look after yourself, you will own your who you are. Don't be afraid to be different. Because when I was younger, I think everyone when they're younger, they want to be with the in crowd. but it's lovely to be different. It's lovely to have a different brain. It's lovely to, I love being quirky. I don't know, I love being like that, but it took me years to get there. And don't be afraid of failure. Like failure, you can learn so much from failure and your mistakes, more so than you can ever learn from successes. And when sometimes you look at someone and think like, oh, they've always been like, you'd look at me and you'd think I was always a chatty, happy-go-lucky person, maybe, and I wasn't. And most people have a backstory, well, maybe not exactly like mine, but something like that in their background. Just yeah, be kind to yourself. And if you're a writer, allow yourself to be awful is my tip. Because if I say to you, write a world-class novel, you would never write one word. If I say to you, write the worst novel in the world, you'll write a million words. If you're an actor, just go for it. Just throw yourself off the bridge. Join that class. If the class isn't right, join another class. Find those meetup groups. Go out and cross that threshold. Don't think about it too much. Just cross that threshold. And if it's not working out, join another one. That's where you'll meet like-minded people. And try to maybe even be creative. 5 minutes a day. Just write, paint, do something, because you can build that up. And just own who you are, and don't be ashamed to be you, because I was for years. I find it difficult to be me, but if you be kind to yourself, trust yourself, and I think, magic things can happen then.
Thank you so much, Claire, for being you. Thank you for having the courage to go against bullying, not through violence, but through the warmth of laughter. And thank you for all of your hard work and for being so kind to me when I met you over in Dublin. Now, if someone wanted to follow you, your YouTube, is there a handle? Is there a YouTube that you have?
Yes, I have a YouTube channel I started during lockdown called Comedy Breaks, and that's Comedy Breaks with a Z. So I don't have many followers at the moment, but I still do sketches now and again. And then it's my Instagram is at Claire Millane. It's Claire with an I, Millane, Millane. And so you can follow my journey. I often post up stuff there about my stand-up gigs and just pictures behind the scenes of films I'm involved in and everything. And the most important thing to your listeners is have a laugh. There's nothing like laughter. Honestly, it can cure any disease. It can cure, if you're feeling awful, it's magic. Just have a laugh, watch a funny film, just talk to your friends and have a laugh. I think that's what life is all about, isn't it? It's just go out there and don't take yourself too seriously. Like I always laugh at myself, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Claire. It's been an honor to have you share your laughter, your joys, and your struggles. And I think that for me, I can learn so much from that. I relate to some of the things that you said, even though I'm not a filmmaker or an actor, but just knowing that I'm not alone in this world when it comes to struggles, and that other people from other walks of life have their own struggles, and it's just inspiring to hear your story. So thank you so much, Claire, for joining us. And again, this is Ryan Anthony Hernandez, and you are listening to the Truth That Heals podcast.